Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Aftershow, designers discussing design. And episode 5 was focused on war games. We had two special guests, Jeff Stahl and Brett Myers. And wow, my mind is blown. The hour just disappeared super quick. How do you feel, Dylan?
I could have danced all night.
Oh, you're like blowing our ears, dude. You really can't do that.
Oh God.
He's excited. Can you tell, folks?
That was only an hour. Seriously, I want to just for the rest of the. I have to work at like 7 o'clock in the morning as well. So like, we're here out of love. We're here out of love for this topic. But let's get this party started. Sen, let's. I hear you got some questions.
All right, I got some questions for you guys. The first question is the one that I asked everybody else, but didn't get to you because, well, we have this whole after show to do, and I didn't want to use up material, and also I didn't want to take away from the guest time. But Dylan, actually, I'm going to leave you to the end because you probably will talk forever about this. But Daryl, what is?
Oh, you gotta limit him. You gotta limit him.
I know. What is the first war game that you ever played, Mr. Andrews, sir?
Well, I mean, I have to give a shout out for Risk. I love Risk. I remember in college I had a Risk league, and we had a website where we kept running tallies, and we had rules on like what made an official game. And I had to have like an official member playing, and we had a whole rule set of which house rules we would include. So I mean, I loved Risk, and I come out of that. I mean, I played like Axis and Allies and all those kind of things as well, but Risk was my first real war game.
All right, and Mr. Kirk, don't go too long. Please don't go too long. Please don't.
Well, I'm just thinking like he had Risk Legacy before there was Risk Legacy. Look at this. I mean, so anyway, no, my first war game was I was 11 years old playing 175 scale miniature war games against my dad. And I remember specifically, like, the earliest games getting utterly and completely trounced. The very, very first game, I remember I was playing a line of Allied troops with a bunch of howitzers in a trench facing off against a small group of panzers. And he would never give any mercy. So I'm like, everything's decimated except for one 75 millimeter howitzer. I'm like, I've got one howitzer left. And he had one little Panther D that hadn't moved on that side of the board, ran over my howitzer and said, "No, you don't." And that was it. And so I was hooked, as you can understand.
That's a great story, and I think that's one of the things that some of the more Ameritrash, let's just throw that word out there, but also war games do, because I remember all the war games I think I've ever played. Which is very different from all the Euros. All the Euros, I leave with a feeling that I was either skilled enough or not skilled enough to win the game.
Yeah.
You're not a true Euro gamer. I still have lots of stories from Euro.
No, you know what? But I leave every war game with a story, and I think that for me is the real difference between the two.
I would disagree because I can name numerous times that I just felt like, well, I just rolled a lot of dice. And I walked away, and I don't actually remember what happened. I'm a little bit of a comatose now.
So have either of you guys actually played like a war game that's lasted several sessions, days, anything like that? Dylan, have you?
Oh God, yeah. We had Starfleet battles stuff that would go days and days. And anytime you put a battleship on the field, it's just gonna last forever. And if you're running advanced damage control rules and crap like that, it's gonna last a long time. And I think I may have said it before, but like in my final graduate studies level strategic studies course, like the seminar course, our final project was a full game of diplomacy. So it was serious. They're long games.
Wow.
I wanted to ask you, Dylan, actually. Sorry, Daryl.
That's all right.
Before we get off the subject of war games and education, because that was actually my first introduction to wargaming was in history class with Columbia, with the block games, like I was talking about before. But Dylan, you found that really cool book by that British professor.
Yep.
And he is basically the #1 specialist in the world on using war simulations to teach. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm still going through it. It's called Simulating War, Studying Conflict Through Simulation Games, and it's by Philip Sabin, Philip Sabin. It's been a really interesting book so far, and really the nice thing about it, the very refreshing thing that he's trying to do is he's using games in class, computer and board games. He's got a limited amount of time. He's got to go for a core element of the game that he wants to pull out of it. So he's saying, okay, in this game, I want to talk about concentration versus dispersion, which is very important part of the World War II period. I want to talk about this or that. So he's got a specific core experience he wants to convey, and that to me is extremely important because when I'm designing war games, I'm now kind of looking at not necessarily a huge long game on a map with chits, but you can play it with cards, you can play it with whatever. You want a core experience that the person's going to walk away from, and that's where the story comes from that you were talking about, Sen. But let's talk to Daryl about his experiences.
Well, honestly, I have nowhere close to your experience with long, epic war games. I would err on the side of I'd rather play multiple games. But, I mean, I have played the odd, like, Axis and Allies where you had to set up and you came back to it multiple days. You played over a weekend, things like that. And I will say, there is something great and epic about coming back, and then you just, boom, you're in that moment of that game again, and the ability, there's a totally different flow to a game when it comes to, like, multi-day, which I think is really interesting. But I'm guessing, Sen, you've probably had some great experiences with it. What about you? Throwing the question back at you.
Well, sure, but before you get to that, I think you actually have done things. You love Legacy. You love Risk Legacy.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, Risk Legacy is an example for me where I come back to it and there's a storyline that's building. So for me, the Legacy mechanic in general is my way of having a long-term investment. I mean, I play other games that have long-term investment. So something like Fantasy Sports, I'll play over 8 months, and that is just one giant game. With people online, but really it's a stats game that really should just be a board game.
And you're about to design it, I think, or you've been trying for the last several years. So I guess my biggest experiences in campaigns, there's something that I love about the macro level, so the very high level fleet levels or armada level battles. To some extent, but I don't want it to get too simmy. So when Dylan was talking about a lot of the things in terms of damage control and repair on the battleships and whatnot, I'm not so big on that end of it. I really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of what the squad level battles are. I love squad level stuff. So what I would do, we would hack together rules from multiple systems, but within the same world. So like a big miniature battle like a Warhammer. Let's talk about Warhammer 40K. Dylan and I both are Warhammer 40K expats, and oh, he's bringing it down. There it is. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Gothic. So what we would do is we would take Battlefleet Gothic, and we'd play kind of an encounter, and then we take it to epic level, and then we take it right down to 40K level to fight the whole battle of whatever it was, Battle of Armageddon, on the map of Armageddon, and then bring it back out into space. It got a little ridiculous, but yeah. Daryl, you have something to say about that?
Oh, I cannot fathom.
That is sheer class. Sheer class.
I'm like, I could play 30 games in that time.
Well, we actually did.
We're 30 games.
Dylan's distorting Mike so much with his passion, but that, in effect, we actually play in a campaign like that. You probably do play probably about 40 games
Right.
because you play multiple games of Gothic, more games of Epic than Gothic, and more games of 40K than Epic. So in order to fight the whole battle, which takes months, honestly, we played for months, like weekends at a time.
Right.
You get a lot of game out of that. and everybody's immersed in it. You have point systems. You have your heroes that get wounded and come back with injuries. So it's like scarring. It's very much like scarring, Daryl.
Well,
So
I get it. I think you're getting your money's worth. That's awesome.
well,
Man.
when you're paying that much for Game Workshop miniatures, you better get your money out of it, right, Dylan?
It's true, absolutely. I mean, getting those fleets on the table, it's a magical experience. And part of it is just seeing it. Talking about the feeling of dropping those dice on the table, getting butterflies in your stomach. Part of it is seeing it on the table and just, I mean, for example, if you and actually, I don't even know if you guys buffs, but if you sit me down in front of a diplomacy board of a game in play, I will just sit there enraptured, and I'd like lose myself for days just thinking about what could be happening on that board, because obviously everything is going to be the entire game is going to be happening in the game of in the mind of the players. There's how can I fake this guy out to do this, blah 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 blah. It's all there on the board, and it just sucks you right in.
Note to self: must play diplomacy with Dylan.
And I think we'll have to put a catheter on him as well, apparently.
And a timer. And a timer.
Yeah, we need to play chess clock variant with Dylan. So let's talk about that though, Dylan. And I know Daryl, you're going to be a little left out with this because you were never into that, but I had for the longest time the Primer Grey Legion because I suck at miniature painting. But that's another part of the wargaming experience that I think draws people in. I know my own sons want to start miniature gaming because they think the miniatures are so cool and they want to learn how to paint and all that kind of stuff. Is that something that drew you in as well, Dylan?
Well, the painting was definitely something, but and again, this is getting down to the kind of historical anality of people like me sometimes. Even my son, again, there's a great father-son bonding in this stuff. He wanted to be a Roman legionary for Halloween last year.
Oh, I remember the costume. It was an awesome costume.
It was a great costume, but the thing is, we had to get serious. He was from Legio Duodecima, Fulminata. He had to know what Fulminata meant. He had to know that Fulminata meant armed with lightning. All of this stuff, and so you're gonna see. Oh no, these guys' shields were blue because they fought in here, and it was this legion was raised after this battle, and they fought at Massilia and all this kind of stuff, and you're looking at stuff like the good old. I wonder if I've got. Yeah, here we are. Some of your Osprey military books, which again take the history.
Oh my word.
Take the historical anality to a new level, where you're, having to be able to justify the color that you put on the scabbard of your miniature for whatever particular ancient's war game based on archaeological records, and it gets down to that. So there's a degree of just seeing the stuff on the table, and then there's the people who really take it seriously.
Daryl's silent. This is funny. Daryl's like, how can you guys do this? No, seriously.
I can never be teased about my love for sports. There's just next level.
Yeah, no, there is some next level stuff. I mean, like when the codexes come out for each army or whatever, and people are fairly fanatic about a lot of this stuff. Like, you can't use that shade of red. That's not the right red for that. It gets to the point of ridiculosity in my case, and it's actually why I play the fantasy and sci-fi versions of war games more than the historical, because I'm not a historian. I don't really care about history. I care about learning from history, but I'm not a big fan of reenactment. I'm not a big fan of simulation. But I think other people are, and that's great. And I will play those games with them. I will just not paint and collect and do that stuff.
Well, sorry, Dylan, you go first.
I'm sorry to claim right of hot pursuit here, but part of the issue for me is how can we say that this is the way people fought? So you've got fantasy games. You can make up any kind of damn story you want.
That's what I like.
Exactly, and that's perfect, and that's exactly the reason why I like playing fantasy and sci-fi games, because I don't get caught up in it, right? Whereas you go to, for example, another favorite period of mine, which is the Japanese Heian period and the Genpei War, 1180 to 1185.
We're going
Where
to take your word for that.
Okay, a lot of the combats, for example, began with whistling arrow duels. Now, this is something that's more or less unheard of in most kind of non-tribal societies. I like to say that the Japanese were fighting with kind of laser guns in using tribal tactics. Like the technology versus the actual tactics being used at the period were completely divergent. But you try to tell a modern gamer that no, there's actually a ceremonial beginning to this battle, and the way that you should feel after this ceremonial beginning is, get into the headspace of a samurai from the late Heian, and attempt to fight a battle like them with the same kind of emotion and feel. It's extremely difficult. You can't do that with Hex and Counter. I've spoken enough.
Sorry, Daryl, what were you saying before Dylan so rudely cut you off?
No, it wasn't rude. But I was curious. I mean, this is definitely his topic. I was going to jump off of, you mentioned people that love history, and I was going to share my personal experience with 1775, because two Christmases ago, I was hanging out with my cousin, who is a great lover of history. And if you were to look at his room, even as a teenager, he had battle maps everywhere, and if you were playing a video game, he'd talk about all the tanks and all the. Oh, we just lost Dylan.
Oh, I think he might have gone to go get a battle map. I think there's a battle map coming up.
Yeah, so there would that would just be what's all over his room. So I remember he has enjoyed different games that I've shown him, but usually they're Euro games, party games. We played Axis and Allies and Risk together and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, we were there on Boxing Day at Fun Games Cafe, and there was 1775. And I said, you know what? His name's Brad. And I said, Brad, why don't you get this game? I think it's supposedly the best war game out there right now. And he's like, oh yeah? And I'm like, yeah, and it's designed by a Canadian. You can't go wrong. And so he's like, all right, I'll buy it. So he bought it. We went home, and we busted out right on the spot. We learned the rules. It was super quick to learn because there were certain elements that were familiar. It was a quicker game, in contrast to some war games. And we played. It was me and him on a team versus my mom and his dad. And it was hilarious because what we did, which I forgot to ask Jeff if this is a legit strategy, we both got our cell phones, and we started texting each other strategy tips. Because part of that game is the order. Sometimes you might have a turn and they'll have two and then someone else. So you don't want to verbally say your strategy. So we started texting each other, and we would giggle and whatever, and they're like, what's going on over there? And nothing. And then my wife took a photo of us texting each other and then busted us and called us out and said, these two are cheating. So then they found out that we were using strategy with smartphones. So I wanted to ask him if that's a legit strategy of war game.
I'm pretty sure Apple was not incorporated in 1775. So I'm gonna pull rank here and say that you cheated.
You can still call it C3I. It's the good old command control communications.
I thought it was like a little pigeon. It was just a little message that was being flown over.
Smoke signals. They didn't use smoke signals. Okay, Dylan, sorry, you have a story.
Well, we're telling stories now. I mean, I got to get into this because, of course, my son, chip off the old block, he's totally into war stuff. And so I decided at the age of 6, it's about the right time to play Hannibal, whatever.
Carthage?
Yeah, Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. So, 6 years old, it's about the right time to start. He had just kind of learned how to read. And so we went right into it.
Sorry, Daryl, have you played Rome versus Carthage?
No, that sounds like something that would give me nightmares.
All right.
So it's actually a card-driven war game. It's not that terribly difficult.
It isn't really that terribly difficult. It's just very funny.
But the thing is, I'm like, he really, really wants to do this, and I don't even know if you can read most of the words on these cards, but let's just humor the little guy. We'll set it up. We'll play a little bit. We'll push the cardboard chits around, and then he starts asking these questions, like, "Daddy, where's Syracuse?" And so I'm like, "Oh, here's Syracuse." It's like, "So that's yours?" It's like, "Yeah, we've got all these chits here and stuff like that." So making sure gets everything set up for his turn, and then he looks at me and he pulls out this card. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. Syracuse allies with Carthage.
And wipes all of my chits off the map. And it's like, you know, there are these moments of kind of father-son bonding. It's like, right there, it's like,
Dylan, you better give him that card on his wedding day, man.
Exactly. And it's like, so you want to talk about stories? I still remember losing Syracuse to my 6-year-old son.
Nice.
That's pretty funny. I mean, I have stories like that too. So we again, being a non-historian, one of my favorite type of war games to introduce non-gamers to would be Battlelore. And I was actually really mad when Fantasy Flight took Battlelore to the next level and put it into the world that it's in now. But I had the original Days of Wonder boxes. I actually liked it so much. I bought 2 boxes, and I have every single army that came out afterwards, up until Fantasy Flight, changed it into the 2nd edition. But I like it because it's really, really easy with the system that Richard Borg came up with to teach kids how to play. And so both my boys know how to play. We'll set it up. It actually takes quite a while to set up, unfortunately. But we'll set it up. We'll get ready to play. We'll spend the day playing it. And there's tons of stories afterwards. And it's dice and it's lucky. But I love playing it with my sons because there are those types of moments where they beat Daddy. They did something they legitimately probably couldn't do in a quote-unquote fair game, but they could certainly do when the dice are on their sides, and they really enjoy that. And I think that's the kind of thing that draws my children, anyways, into the wargaming end of things, so much so that Ethan has designed his wargame. It's about plaque attacking his teeth. So it's sugar bug attack, but he designed that with a little bit of my help when he was 6, I think. He designed his first war game, and it was pretty fun. I'll have to pull it out sometime to take a look at it, but I mean, it could obviously be massaged into something better, but 5% better. But he did a really good job on considering all the unit types and things like that, so the asymmetry and whatnot.
Well, I gotta ask this, Dylan, your love of war games. What war games are you working on? What games are we gonna look forward to seeing when you finally let them out in the world? What are some war games you're working on?
I've got a few, but I think the one that I'm kind of most interested in right now, obviously, is Thunder Chief.
Thunder Chief!
What I was trying to send, played it 3-4 years ago. It's been
I loved it.
A long time. But it was, I think, a developmental step along the way of understanding the meaning of capturing the essence of an experience and attempting to transpose that to whatever medium that it takes. So in this case, I designed a game about electronic warfare, specifically in the Vietnam War in 1965, because in 1966 they had a different anti-radiation missile, and in a time when you laugh.
Oh, we just lost our one viewer. Oh, there he's back.
But the issue there is, I wanted to create an experience that was, a dude in the back of a Thunder Chief jet going in with his electronics package against a radar-guided surface-to-air missile in North Vietnam. And that's all. It's all on a radar screen, more or less. So why would I need distance. Why would I need any of you're already shooting more or less, from the horizon to way up in the sky. All the distances and crap, it doesn't matter. What matters is that moment where you don't know if the signal on your radar screen is real or not. And capturing that moment of chicken was kind of what I wanted to get players to experience in the game. And that just trying to design that and make that experience in a weird medium for me, it was foundational, I think.
That's a great story. And you're right. I mean, I played that several years ago at Calgary's Cardstock. And it was really interesting then. There were some issues with it, obviously, because it didn't come out as you liked it. And then you moved to the Philippines, right? Was that what happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because it really does show that a good game and a good idea for a game has legs. Don't give up on your games. All you designers out there who are watching this, don't give up on the games that you feel in your heart of hearts has something to say.
You'll circle around to it for sure.
Yeah, just come back to it later. Sorry, Daryl, do you want to jump in on something?
Well, I mean, I was just going to, along those lines, actually, I thought it was really interesting that Jeff talked about, just knowing the rich history of his area and just kind of designing what you know, what you're passionate about, what you have experience with. Like, obviously, Dylan has tons of experience when it comes to strategy and history and all these things, and weaving that into his love for game design as well. I mean, that is going to ooze through his design. And I'm sure, those kind of things are ways that we connect with our audience. That is ways that people know that you love this game, you've poured yourself into it, in those little details that maybe the majority don't notice. But this is a way that, you can express yourself and express that story. So I know, Sen, I mean, we just had Jeff and Brett on. I have very limited interaction with them. What's your experience? How have you known those guys? Was it just online, or have you met them before?
Actually, it was it's very funny because Jeff and I went to the same university. We lived around kind of the same area. We have the same friends, and but we never met. It's like when Harry met Sally. Remember that? Those two old couples, we never met.
Yeah, because I know Jeff knows Micah, who was on our first episode, and then I briefly met Brett at Gathering of Friends. Did you ever see any of his prototypes there?
Yeah, I saw this one with really, really cool rhombuses. I think they're tiles that are rhombuses.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really neat game. It looked awesome. I didn't actually have a chance to play it, but I have played the Lord of the Rings game that Jeff and Brett co-designed together based on Mike Elliott's and Eric Lang's initial Quarriors design. And it's I like it better than Quarriors just because of the story element.
Yeah.
That to me made it just that much better. Just take it to the next level. I know it. A lot of people prefer the original, and now most people are all into the Marvel thing. But I think that Lord of the Rings did a really interesting job of telling the tale using the system. And as you can see from a lot of Jeff's work, that's kind of how he does it. He tells a story of what happened in the war, or perhaps what will happen in the war, or what might happen through the gameplay, and that to me is really interesting. Oh, I wanted to talk to you guys actually about Wallace's game.
Shogun?
A Few Acres of Snow. No, A Few Acres of Snow.
Oh.
Just because we're on that whole Canada thing today, and that particular war. Dylan? Have you played it?
I actually haven't. I feel remiss.
You should go try and play it. Just don't break the rules with the Halifax Hammer. Daryl, I know you've played it, right?
I played it once, but it's honestly a bit vague. Like in my memory, I personally didn't really connect with it, so I don't want to sound like the anti-Wallace guy, but sometimes it's just too much text, too many little I don't know. I get dried out. I get a little on the board side.
Oh, it's interesting because I mean I'm very connected to that kind of war for some reason. Well, not that kind of war, but that war. And so I should actually.
Yeah, the history I love. The funny thing is, I found myself more not caring about the game and just reading the cards and thinking about like movies or just different things. But I just didn't connect with the gameplay. It didn't do anything for me. And for me, my favorite Wallace game is Discworld. Most people hate that game because it's chaotic, and I like it because at least it's fun.
I actually had a lot of fun playing Few Acres of Snow, but the most interesting part of it was the fun that was had by thinking that's exactly what that side would do,
Right.
or that's exactly what that side did. Like I executed the move that happened in that war, which was really cool for me. Doing it with cards,
Right.
but abstracted it, took it out another level from little figures. Because I mean, I've done it many
Yeah.
times with the figures and Napoleonics and whatnot,
That's true. I
doing
can
it
see
with
how that's fun.
doing with cards is really interesting from a design perspective anyways. That's saying, hey, you can get the same feeling without $600 worth of miniatures and 20 million hours of painting it and rolling dice. So to me, it was a kind of a revelation that you can capture that experience within a different type of game system.
Right.
So, Dylan, what's going on with you right now?
Well,
We
I
haven't
actually,
talked in a bit.
well, I actually just kind of wanted to loop in a few things to that one discussion. We're talking about, we mentioned about geography. We're in an area, this is not where I grew up on the eastern side of Canada, but it's where I am now. And the kind of historicity of this area, and specifically talking about, for the era of, Quebec, New France, and those memories are still alive in the people today.
Oh, very
And,
much so.
Mhm.
You speak to anyone about Montcalm's attitude at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, and why did he charge, and why did Wolfe keep on using amphibious tactics and running away every single time, and why did it go on so long? All these various things, they're still, even though they're 200 years old, they're still very much alive in people in this region especially. But I wanted to draw a weird connection. The line, a few acres of snow, of course, in French is quelques étapes de neige,
Right.
and that's where the original phrase came from. The link here is that a couple of guys from Quebec, of course, designed the game called Trivial Pursuit in English, which in French is called quelques arpents de piège. And it's a play on the word like a few acres of trivia kind of thing. So I just thought that I'd bring that up. Another Canadian linkage.
Do you know that Trivial Pursuit inventors are actually from where I live, Kitchener-Waterloo?
Seriously?
Yeah.
I thought because they had done their work in Montreal, didn't they?
I don't know.
totally not honest.
Everyone takes claim, right?
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure I designed Trivial Pursuit, but
It's true.
anyways,
Break down words, by the way. It was an excellent thought of the French name for it.
All right. Well, I better wrap up, but I just want to highlight to people next week we have Josh Capel and Steven Sauer talking about art and design, and also we'll have special guest Jordan Goodard. If you want to look at the design contests and see the 10 candidates, you can go to collapsecards.com/design-contest. We'll put the link up on our Facebook and Google and website and all that jazz and Twitter. Meanwhile, you'll see all our information. Reach us. Let us know what you think. If you have ideas for future shows, or if you have questions about art and design. Thanks so much, and have a great night.